Welcome! In this explainer, we're stepping into the philosophical ring for one of the biggest matchups of all time, Plato versus his own student, Aristotle. Believe me, their clash of ideas about what's actually real would go on to shape the next 2,000 years of Western thought. So let's kick things off with a huge question, one that drove both of these incredible thinkers. Just look around you for a second. How do you know that any of this is truly real? Is reality what you can see and touch, or is it something else entirely? And that question is really what this whole disagreement is about. You see, Plato, the idealist, he believed true reality exists in some perfect unseen world of ideas. But his student, Aristotle, was a realist. He argued that no, reality is right here in the physical world that we experience with our senses. So the core of their debate is this: should we trust our reason or should we trust our senses? Here's our roadmap. First, we'll dig into that core debate, reason versus senses. Then we'll dive into Plato's world of forms, followed by Aristotle's four causes. After that, we'll put their ultimate realities head-to-head, and we'll finish up with some key evaluation points to get you ready for your exam. So let's get right to the heart of it, this fundamental clash. What do we trust more, our minds or our senses? So picture this. We're in ancient Greece. Plato learned from the great Socrates, and Aristotle was Plato's star pupil. You'd think they'd agree, right? But nope. Their answers to that question of reality would split philosophy right down the middle, creating two massive traditions, rationalism and empiricism. And here they are, those two paths. On one side, you've got Plato's rationalism. He believes that real, true knowledge comes from reason alone. Our minds are the key. But on the other side, you've got Aristotle's empiricism. He argued that nope, all knowledge begins with what we can see, hear, and touch, our sensory experience of the world. Okay, so let's explore Plato's big idea. For him, this world that we see with our senses, it isn't the real world at all. He said it's just a shadow, kind of like a poor copy of a higher, perfect, and totally unchanging reality. Now, Plato explains this with his super famous analogy of the cave. He asks us to imagine a group of prisoners who've been chained their entire lives, just facing a wall. The only thing they've ever seen are shadows cast on it. So for them, those shadows are reality. So the story follows one prisoner who is freed. He's literally dragged out of the cave into the blinding light of the real world. At first, it's painful, confusing, but eventually his eyes adjust and he sees true objects. He finally understands the shadows were just illusions. This whole journey represents the philosopher using reason to grasp true knowledge. But here's the kicker: when he goes back to the cave to try and free the others, they think he's gone mad. They actually reject him because they prefer the comfort of their illusions. Now, this world outside the cave, that's what Plato called the world of the forms. It's this non-physical realm of perfect, eternal ideas or blueprints. So everything in our world, like a beautiful painting or a just law, is just a flawed copy. It's what he calls a particular, that is just participating in the perfect, universal form of beauty or justice. And this world of the forms isn't just a random jumble of ideas. It has a structure, a hierarchy. And right at the very, very top is the most important one of all: the form of the good. Think back to the sun in the cave analogy, how it made sight possible. Well, the form of the good does that for all the other forms. It illuminates them. It's the ultimate source of all reality and all knowledge, and it's what makes it possible for our reason to understand big concepts like justice and beauty in the first place. Okay, let's pull a full 180 and get our feet back on the ground with Aristotle. He completely rejected this idea of another world. For him, truth and reality were right here in front of us. We just needed a good method to understand it all. And his method? The four causes. He said that to truly understand anything, you have to ask four questions. First, the material cause. What's it made of? Second, the formal cause. What's its shape, its structure? Third, the efficient cause. What or who made it? And finally, and this was the most important one for Aristotle, the final cause. What is its purpose, its end goal, its telos? This brings us to a really key comparison, one that's perfect for your exams. How did each of these philosophers explain the ultimate reason for everything? For Plato, it was the form of the good. For Aristotle, it was something called the prima mover. See, Aristotle looked around and noticed that everything in the universe is in a state of constant motion and change. He called this modus. He reasoned that this chain of motion had to have a starting point. He called this the prime mover, a perfect, unchanging being that is the ultimate cause of all that motion, basically drawing everything towards itself without ever moving. And wow, the contrast between these two ultimate realities is huge. Plato's form of the good is outside our world, but it's the source of all goodness within it. Aristotle's prime mover, on the other hand, is at the edge of our universe, but it's completely detached, it's impersonal. It isn't even aware of our world, it just acts as the final purpose that everything in the universe is striving towards. All right, now for the crucial bit, the evaluation. In your exam, it's not enough to just describe these theories. You've got to weigh their strengths and weaknesses and argue which one you think is more convincing. So, on one hand, Plato's theory is pretty powerful. It gives us a reason for all the imperfections we see around us, and it gives a solid basis for universal truths like justice. It also makes a good point that our senses can definitely fool us. But, and it's a big but, there's zero empirical evidence for this world of the forms. Critics say it devalues the physical world, which is, kind of essential for our survival. And is it really possible to have a perfect form of beauty that exists separately from any actual beautiful things? Now, Aristotle's theory has its own trade-offs. Its biggest strength is that it's all grounded in observation and scientific inquiry, stuff we can actually see. But it really struggles with abstract concepts like justice. And is it actually true that everything has a purpose? Later philosophers like David Hume came along and questioned if we can even truly observe cause and effect at all, let alone some ultimate cosmic purpose for the universe. So what's the big takeaway for your exam? First, remember the core debate, rationalism versus empiricism. Know Plato's key ideas, the cave, the forms, the good. And for Aristotle, the four causes and the prime mover. For a simple AO2 point, think of it like this. Plato offers a theory of absolute certainty, but has no physical evidence. Aristotle built his theory on evidence, but he struggles to prove universal purpose. And definitely keep in mind, these ideas are the absolute bedrock for so many other topics you'll study, from arguments for God's existence to the nature of the soul. So, we end right where we began. This whole debate, at the end of the day, is about two fundamentally different ways of seeing reality. Do we trust our reason to guide us to a truth beyond what we can see? Or do we trust our senses to help us understand the world that's right here in front of us? Plato or Aristotle? Which path makes more sense to you?